I'll do everything I can for you.
Thank you.
My name is Dana Mitchell. I'm a retired police captain, and for the city of Dover, I had 26 years of law enforcement, all in New Hampshire. And I am speaking for Police Chief Anthony Colarusso in the Dover Police Department. So I want to take a common sense approach to this law. I'm going to appeal to your common sense. We are a nation of laws. The laws have to matter. There are a variety of federal laws that I might not agree with, and that we all might not, but I think it's a bad precedent to kind of pick and choose and send that message to our citizens that we're going to pick and choose the laws of the nation we're going to follow. It would be a little bit like 3 years from now if you passed this legalization, Dover saying, you know what, we're going to make marijuana illegal. We're going to be a laboratory. This body would say, who do you think you are? What do you do? We can't have people picking and choosing. Keene has it illegal and Dover doesn't. We can't have a hodgepodge. We all have to follow the same set of laws whether we like it or not. That's what you would say to Dover if you legalized marijuana and we passed a city ordinance that said it's illegal. It just wouldn't work. And it would be the same thing as if Dover wanted the Spalding Turnpike to be 85 miles an hour, because we think that would be, people would still drive at the same speed that they would have anyways. And you'd say, no, you're going to follow consistent speeding regulations for law. That would be against state law to set a speed limit of 85 in Dover or on Dover Point Road, and police department to say we're not going to. So that's how we feel as far as the legal aspect, but just as simple as that. We have to all go along. We're all in the same, we're a society of laws, and there's a system to change those things. And Washington and Colorado have taken a different route on that, and we'll see how that works out for them. But that's one thing. Second thing is, like the student said, the message it sends to kids. Alcohol is the #1 problem. There's a reason that there's 37% of kids at Dover High School have had alcohol in the last 30 days by our numbers, because it's available. It's in 20-something different locations in Dover. It's advertised. There's big signs, drink, 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 in the front of every single store. It's on TV. It's on the Super Bowl. There's nothing to suggest to the kids in my community or anyone else's community that there's anything to worry about with alcohol. The message is, it's fine. My fear is the same thing happening, that you follow a pattern with alcohol, with marijuana, as you have currently with alcohol. We're going to go down that same road of it's harmless, there's no problem with it. That's the message to the kids. That's the inevitable message you're going to get. There is a group of kids that are going to try it anyways, and they're using it now. There's also a group of kids, I believe, who are curious about it, might be inclined to try it, don't want to get in trouble. They're basically law-abiding type kids, so although they might be inclined to try it out of curiosity, they're going to pass on that. That cohort of kids exists in our communities. I don't believe for a second, and as a position of the police department, that you have it's a bad message to kids and you have an access problem. In terms of if it's greater, legalized in any way, not only are you sending that message, you make it more readily available in stores throughout Dover. However, it's going to be purchased by people who are over 21, and it's going to just simply be more available. And it's different than alcohol in a couple of important ways. If my 16-year-old wants to try to get a six-pack of beer by me, it weighs 4 or 5 pounds. It's the size of a lunchbox. And if he drinks it, he smells, his breath smells, it's easy to spot. A handful of joints is cupped in your hand. It's the ability to hide it and secrete it and get it past a parent is far greater with a handful of joints than it is for a case of beer. It's just simply different. It's a matter of common sense to us in Dover that we simply don't believe that it's not going to be a greater access than it already is if we have it that readily available and we send those kinds of positive messages. The final thing we're concerned about is the issue of driving. And it's just sort of a practical standpoint. I have no reason to think that people stoned are going to be good drivers. We have a lot of evidence to indicate that the effect of marijuana involving spatial relationships and important skills and capacities for driving are diminished from smoking marijuana. Same as for alcohol. With alcohol, it's very clear to me as a police officer, the level of impairment follows the level in the blood very closely. We know that 0.08 represents a certain level of impairment for most people. So we can set a line for that. I would ask you, do you know what is the level of marijuana in the blood at which most people are impaired and shouldn't be driving?
0.8
For marijuana?
9
So if it's 8 nanograms per milliliter of blood, and in Colorado it's 5. They're having debate over that level. So I don't feel like, and we don't feel like, Adoa, that the science on that is quite as precise and settled. And if someone is suspected of drinking alcohol, it's a quick, less invasive breath test that's involved, and you get a very precise number right away. There is no breath test for marijuana to achieve that. It's a much more involved process. I asked the chief this morning, when was the last time we arrested somebody for driving under the influence of marijuana? We couldn't think of one. It's a whole different prospect when you stop a car and the person I stopped somebody for speeding, and they roll down that window and hand the license and registration, and they look a little funny, but I don't know this person, and now, how do I find out what the level of THC is in his blood and whether he's safe to go on and drive down your street? The fact is, as a practical situation, that's going to be very hard for your police officers. We feel the Dover police officer is going to be very challenged with that, and certainly that people are still smoking marijuana around the streets right now. We think this is going to exacerbate that problem because there are adults out there who might smoke marijuana, might be curious about it, but because most people are law-abiding and won't break the law, they aren't doing it. I think there's going to be greater access, greater availability, more people out on the streets smoking marijuana, and I don't think we have a good established system and level of science of how we're going to handle that. On the street at 2 o'clock in the morning in downtown Dover, what's the police officer going to do? And I don't think you have good answers for that. So it's practical, common sense problems. And let me just end with this. The citizens of Colorado and Washington State have decided to take their whole populations onto a grand experiment. How has it worked for them? We don't know. What were the unintended consequences, the law of unintended consequences? What happened in Washington and Colorado as a result of legalizing? We don't know. Why are we going to drag the citizenry of the state of New Hampshire down that same road when we have the perfect opportunity to sit back and say, we don't know about this, let's see how this works out? That's common sense. Because if you legalize this and all of a sudden it falls apart in Washington, Colorado, we're going to say, oh, we wish we never did this. We're going to already be down that road with them and backing up off of this. And that's one of the reasons why you change off of the current system with a great deal of caution. Because if you find out it's wrong, going back the other way is going to be worse. So for all of those practical common sense reasons, we are dead set against this. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, sir. Sarah Levesque, you have 10 minutes. I'll ask you to take that.
I'll try.
Field sobriety test won't work on some people.
Yeah. My name's Sarah Levesque. I live in Wilmot, New Hampshire, and I am a cannabis activist. I got involved with medical marijuana advocacy 3 years ago because as a teenager, I witnessed my father suffering every single day. He used marijuana medicinally. It helped him sleep, it helped him eat, it helped ease his pain. And he needed a transplant, and they told him that if he wanted a transplant, he would have to give up using marijuana. So he had to choose between being able to eat, being able to sleep, and not living in pain, or having the chance to survive. As a teenager, that told me that our laws are not written in our best interests. It told me that something needed to be done. About 3 years ago, I decided to get involved with medical marijuana, and I've come here and I've sat in on testimony, in the House and in the Senate, year after year.
This doesn't apply to
I understand
marijuana.
that it doesn't have to be marijuana. I'm leading up to show you where my journey came. I started as a medical marijuana advocate and I became a cannabis activist because I go out and I talk to people everywhere I go. I work in a CPA firm here in Concord, and I talk to people in the CPA firm, my clients and my bosses. I talk to my children's school teachers and the nurses and the principals. I talk to people at the gas station. I talk to people at the mall. I go out and I talk to people about cannabis. And everywhere I go, I have never heard anybody say that their life was ruined because of cannabis. Alcohol plays a huge factor in date rape. College girls are raped on a daily basis because they're too drunk to take care of themselves. Domestic violence happens every day because some husband gets too drunk and beats up his wife. That I've never heard of happening with cannabis. Alcohol is regulated in our state. It's perfectly legal. Our state sells it. Cannabis is a healthier alternative. It doesn't lower your inhibitions. It does not cause reckless behavior. It is not toxic. You can drink alcohol to the point of dying just from consuming too much. You can die from alcohol because you consume it for too long of a period and it damages your body. You can die from alcohol because of the reckless behavior that you partake in while you're under the influence. That does not happen with cannabis. I have talked to a lot of people around this state, everywhere, walked up to perfect strangers and talked to them and asked them to sign a petition. Every single one of you have received an email from me, and if you've been here more than this year, you've received multiple emails from me. I've written letters to the editor. I've had people come to my house. I've had a town welfare worker come to my house to talk to me about cannabis because of the things that I wrote to the newspaper. I've talked to a lot of people. I don't think that the police have an accurate description of what people think about cannabis because it's legal. Who's going to tell a cop? Yeah, I smoke it and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. They're not gonna. I remember being in school and I remember being lied to. I remember being fed false information. And I have learned from experience that the information that I was provided in school was false. I've seen it through personal experience, and I've seen it through everybody I've talked to over the years, going out and asking them personally. I think it's time that we regulate marijuana like alcohol.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for cutting it down.